So the goal is about how many problems out of the 15 problems I shared in the group on arrays have you solved? Have you solved all of them, or at least 10 or equals 10, or maybe from 5 to 10 or less than 5? So if you haven't solved all of them, just go and give it a try. Not now, after the session is over, because they're all very simple and implementational problems. All you need to know is how to manipulate different things, right? So they are not difficult and they don't need any extra algorithms. You just have to put your efforts in coming up with the logic. You have to understand that, and you have to put some efforts to come up with the logic. You don't need to know anything extra, like you don't even need to know how to do sorting on arrays to solve any of those problems. So that's why they are called purely implementational problems. So you try them. That's my suggestion. And for example, I will go ahead and explain one problem which is very simple in this. See this one. The rest of them are very straightforward. So 3 consecutive odds is question, right? So how many of you solved this one? So if you solve this one, 3 consecutive odds, send in the chat box I solved. The 15th, the last question in the list. So 3 consecutive odds.
కావాలంటే వెనక్కి వేసుకొని జారపడచ్చు కూడా.
Yes. Okay. So seems like a lot of you have solved this. Anyways, so let me explain this problem. The problem is you will be given an array, so which will contain integers. So you'll be given an array of integers. You can see an integer array, and you need to figure out whether there are 3 consecutive numbers in the array. For example, if you take 2, you need to find out 2 neighbors of the 2. That means they are consecutive, right? 2, 6, 4. Now you can see 2, 6, 4 are not odd numbers. None of them is odd, right? For that matter, none of them is odd. All of them are even. Now, then you will pick 6, 4, 1. Now 6, 4, 1, only 1 is odd, right? Now you cannot pick 4, 1 because there are no 3 consecutive numbers. There are only 2 consecutive numbers, right? From this point onwards. So here you cannot really find any occurrence of 3 consecutive odd numbers. The answer is false. Now look at the next test case. In the next test case, 1, 2, 34. Only 1 consecutive odds there, 1. Now let us take 2, 34, 3. See, there are 1 consecutive odd, that is only 3. Now if you take 3, 4, 5, actually 3 and 5 are odd, but they are not consecutive because 4 comes in the way. If 4 comes in the way, you cannot really say they are consecutive, right? So let me record this session. I forgot to start recording. Okay. Okay, guys. Now if you look at the next pair, 4, 5, 7. Now in 4, 5, 7, you can see not 3 consecutive odds, but only 2 consecutive odds, 5 and 7. Right? So this is also not satisfying our requirement. But if you look at 5, 7, 23, see, there are 3 consecutive odds. Right? So there could be more than 3 also, we don't care about it. But there should be at least 3 consecutive odds present at any point. So for this array, the answer is true. Now, how do you find this? So which loop is actually better here? Is it a value-based loop or index-based loop? So would you go for a value-based loop or would you go for an index-based loop? The first thought that comes into the mind. Those who solve this. Guys, is my voice audible? Right? Okay. So let me show you how you can approach these kind of problems. They're actually very implementational. When they're asking just to find whether 3 consecutive odd numbers are there or not, you can simply check the indexes, current index and current index plus 1, current index. So if you take an array of integers like this, you know they are indexed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in this array of integers, so let us bring them the actual values 1, 2, 34, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 34, 3, 4, 5. And what else are there? 7, 23, 12. 7, 23, 12, right? Now this is an array of 9 values, right? The indexes range from 0 to 8. So this is our array of 9. Okay. Now the point here is you will start running the loop on this array. And when you start running the loop on this array, you start using a variable I. Now, if you want to find out whether there are 3 consecutive odds, all you need to check is I plus 1, I plus 2, right? So that means they are consecutive. I plus 1, I plus 2. Now, what does that mean? That means we are checking the indexes 0, 1 and 2. Now, you are going to bring this combination out and you are going to check whether these values at these particular indexes are all odd. All odd means this one should be odd, which means value at ith index should be odd, value at I plus 1th index should be odd, value at I plus 2nd index should be odd. Now, in other words, what we have to check, if A of I, it should be odd, and A of I plus 1 should be odd, I plus 1 should be odd, and A of I plus 2 should also be odd, right? Now, how do you check whether this is odd or not? Maybe you can write a function for this, or you can simply check mod 2 equals 0 or mod 1, mod 2 equals, mod 2 not equals 0, right? That way you can check. But here is the catch. In the program, it's little tricky because the constraint states that array can contain only one element also. See, look at the length of array. Length of array could be 1 also. Now, you may get a doubt. If the array contains only one value, how could there be 3 consecutive numbers? That's the correct question, right? If array contains only one value, one element, you cannot really check for I plus 1 and I plus 2, right? Is it correct? Now, if array contains 2 values like this, maybe something like 10 and 20, here also you cannot check for 3 consecutive values. See, if you want to check for 3 consecutive odds, at least there should be 3 numbers, right? At least there should be 3 numbers. You got the point? So for any value, any n, the length of array that is less than 3, the answer is false. Why? Well, it's quite obvious, right? If the array itself does not contain 3 numbers, what is the point in checking if there are 3 odd numbers consecutively? So we are going to handle this case separately. You can simply write if length of array is less than 3, then the answer is false. Not only that, one more problem that you encounter is, let us check here. Let us check. You can see 1, 2, 34. These are not consecutive, 3 consecutive odds. Then you move to first index, right? And when you move to first index, I plus 1, I plus 2 are now 1, 2, 3 indexes, which means these are the new 3 values, right? Now these are also not consecutive odd numbers. Then you will slowly move up to here, right? Now luckily here you found the odd values, 3 odd numbers. But what if one more value here is present like 24? Here also this is not 3 consecutive odds, right? Then you will move on to next value. But here is the catch. At every I value, you are checking I plus 1 and I plus 2 also. Now in this way, you can only check from size of array minus 2, right? Less than size of array minus 2. See, size of array is what? 9, right? And if you move I from this 6th index to 7th index, you may get index out of bounds error, because for 7th index, yes, I plus 1 is there. But look at this, I plus 2 is not here, right? So you also have to take care that you should never reach beyond the boundary. You got the point, guys? You have to go to a place from which you can certainly find I plus 1, I plus 2 also. Now one such place would be just the third number from the last. See, third number from the last means index value is 6, right? So you can stop your for loop for int I equals 0. I less than size of array n minus 2. What is n minus 2 here? N is 9, right? Top you can see 9 minus 2, right? 9 minus 2 is 7, right? And if you are going less than 7, you will stop at where? 6th index, right? So it can be very sure that for 9th index, if you go beyond 6th index, there won't be I plus 2. Guys, is it clear? How many of you understood this logic? How do you find out whether there are 3 consecutive odds or not? Understood? So I will implement it. I'm not going to ask you to implement because I already sent you in the group. I'm expecting you to solve this. So how do I implement this? Is first I will check the length of array. In Java I'm writing array.length, and I will check if n is less than 3. So this is the base case, right? If there aren't even 3 elements, there is no point in checking for 3 consecutive elements at all. So simply in this case I'm returning false. Next, I'm going to run the loop from I equals 0, I less than n minus 2, I plus plus. I already told you why am I running up to only n minus 2? Because I would like to check ith index, I plus 1 index, I plus 2. Now if I reach n minus second index, there won't be I plus 2 for it. So that is why I'm stopping before n minus second index. Okay. So now what do we check? We are going to check if array of I, this one should be odd, which means if I perform mod 2, it should be 1. And array of I plus 1 also is the same. If I perform mod 2, it should also be 1. And at the same time, array of I plus 2, if I perform mod 2, this should also be 1. So if all these 3 conditions are satisfied, that means the current element, element next to it, element next to it, all of them are odd. So we're going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to return false. Please note that I'm not returning false after this if statement. I'm returning false after this for loop, because in this for loop, we have to check all the possibilities. Till the last value, we have to check if there is a possibility of having 3 odds. Only if entire loop is completed, the return statement is not encountered, then we are returning false. Right? So I hope you understood this. Let me run this. Test case is passed. Is it clear, everyone? Could you please send a message in the chat box whether it's clear or not? Now, the reason I picked this one is I'm going to talk about something similar to this in today's session. Before moving on to the problems that revolves around 2 pointers as well as revolves around some sorting on arrays. So could you please message in the chat box if you understood the logic I have written here? So for any value that is less than 3, there won't be 3 numbers in the array at all. So there is no question in consecutive. Otherwise, I'm checking current index plus 1, current index plus 2. Clear, clear, clear. Okay, cool. Now that you understand this, so I'm going to introduce one more very common and very frequently asked problem called as finding consecutive or finding longest consecutive values. So sometimes this question can be asked like find out max consecutive ones or find out max something like consecutive ovals, like this. Or maybe they will try to ask you questions like find out max consecutive ES, like this. On strings, the rest of the 2, on numbers, the first one. So basically, how these questions will be framed is, you will be given an array or string. They could give you an array or they could give you a string. Let me start with arrays. And in the typical problem, you will be having some ones and some zeros. So let's talk about a problem called max consecutive ones. This problem is present in LeetCode. It's a very famous problem. So first let us see how to approach these kind of problems. Now in this question, what you have to do is you will be given some ones and zeros. So you can be very sure that your array contains only ones and zeros. So let me write a one here, a one, and then a zero, and a triple one and zero, right? Now what they will ask you is they are going to ask you to find out what is the maximum consecutive ones series you found. For example, if you take this 1 and 1, so you can see they are consecutive. So two such ones are consecutive, right? This is 1. So you can say 2. But if you look at this sequence, you can see 3 consecutive ones. So definitely 3 is greater than 2, right? So in this particular array, the number of maximum consecutive ones is 3. You got the question, guys? So I hope you understood the question. So I'm going to give you one more array. You tell me what is the maximum consecutive ones here. So here we have 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So what is the answer for this? How many maximum consecutive ones are here? So I hope you are giving the answers. Yes, that is correct. 4. And I will show you one more array. Now tell me how many max consecutive ones are there. So that's 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. How many maximum consecutive ones are here in this array? What is the answer for this? How many? Yes, 1. So number of maximum consecutive ones are 1 only, because you can see if you want to say that it is consecutive, guys, it should be right next to each other like this. But you can see 1 is far away from this one. In between there are 2 zeros. So you cannot really say this one and this one are consecutive. And in the same way, this one and this one are also not consecutive because there is a 0 in between. So how many maximum consecutive ones are there? 1, only 1, right? So that is the answer for this. And for this, 4 is the answer. Right? Now this question can be framed into like finding out maximum consecutive vowels or any other things. Right? Now in that case, how you can approach this problem? Well, this is also an implementational level problems. It doesn't really require you to learn something like sorting or something. The reason is you should not sort, because if you sort, all the ones comes into one position and all the zeros comes into beginning, right? So that will not give you answer at all. Now, so to approach this kind of problems, we can use some technique which is very, very easy to understand. Okay. Now my idea is in my particular array, there are only zeros and ones, right? So first observation is, what is the first observation? In my array, there are only zeros and ones. Okay. So which means if I am at an index I, it could be either a 1 like this, or if I'm at an index I like this, it could be a 0. Only 2 options are there, not more than that. Now, if I encounter a 0, whenever I encounter a 0 here, that indicates up until that point, I either encountered some ones or encountered none at all. For example, look here, guys. We started at this one, right? Now, then we will slowly move on, right? Because that is what running a loop is. Are you getting the point? When we try to run the loop on this array, first we will start at the 0th index where you found a 1. Okay, let us move on to next index. Here also we found a 1. Here also we found not a 1 but a 0. Now what does that indicates? Whenever you find a 0, there are two options. The first option is every single value you found up to that part is a 1 like this, or you found no ones at all. For example, if you take this 0, by the time you reach this 0, you only visited 1 0, right? Now our point is, whenever you found a 1, let us take two variables here. The first variable is called as ones count. The second variable is called as max number of ones. So initially, ones will be set to 0 and max ones will also be set to 0. Here, so ones is going to count how many ones we are visiting in the direction. Now max ones is used to find out how many maximum number of ones we found so far. You got the point? Now let's run the loop. We can solve this problem just by running the loop on this array for once. So you don't need to run for 2 times or 3 times. So clearly listen to the algorithm. First, when you are at any index, first see whether that index is having a 1 or 0. Is it a 1 or 0? It's a 1, right? Whenever it's a 1, simply increment the count of ones like this and move forward. See, now also you found a 1, right? So simply increment the count of ones. 2. Now, when you found a 0, now what does that indicate? Basically that indicates so far you found ones, right? Now how many ones I found so far? Consecutive ones. You can see that in ones count, right? Now you update this ones count with the maximum of max ones and this one. So that means I'm going to update this max ones with the maximum value of 2 and 0. What is the maximum value of 2 and 0? 2, right? So I'm updating this with 2. See guys, why am I updating this 2? See, so far I don't find any maximum consecutive ones. But when I found 0, I'm very certain that I found some ones in front. That is why I'm checking if ones is greater than max ones, which is correct in this case. I'm updating max ones with ones like this. Now this indicates so far I found 2 consecutive ones. True or false? True, right? Like this. You understood the point, guys? But here is the catch. Now that you found a 0, that means these ones ended here, right? These consecutive ones ended here. That is the reason you found 0. Otherwise, you would have found one more 1, right? So whenever you encountered a 0, the consecutive nature of ones is terminated. The consecutive nature of ones ends here, right? That is why you set this ones back to 0. Now what does that mean? From now onwards, you will freshly count ones. Now you may ask a question, why we should freshly count? Because when you encounter a 0, that simply breaks the chain. Breaks the chain means, so far you found all ones, but this 0 breaks their consecutiveness. How many of you understood this point, guys? Why I did set this ones back to 0 here? Is it clear, guys? How many of you understood that? Hello? Is that particular point clear? Yes? Okay. So now I can move forward. So I'm moving forward. Currently we are at this 0. And when we encountered a 0, what we do? We checked if ones count. If ones count is greater than max ones, then we updated this max ones with ones count. Now let us go to another 0. So when you went to another 0, you will try to do the same thing, right? Because you don't know whether you came to this 0 from a consecutive 1 sequence or you came to this 0 with another 0 from another 0, right? But when you try to do the same thing, you can see ones count is not greater than max 1. See, that is the point of setting it back to 0. So then max ones still be 2. Okay. Now let us go to next index. In the next index, you found 1, right? So when you find a 1, you only do one thing. You increment ones count like this. Now, in the next index also, you found one more 1. So increment it by 1. So it becomes 2. And in the 6th index also, there is 1. So we increment ones count by 1 one more time, makes it 3. But now you found 0, right? When you found 0, what do you try to do? You try to see if so far the accumulated sum of ones, or rather count of ones, is greater than max ones. That is correct, right? So far you thought only 2 consecutive ones are there. But now this ones being 3 indicates there are 3 consecutive ones. So you're going to update this max ones with 3. That's it. Now in the end, you will simply return this max ones. This is the answer. Is it clear, guys? Do you understand the logic, what to do? So when you encounter a 0, what to do? When you encounter a 1, what to do? So will you try to solve the problem? I will send the problem. So this is the lead code problem, max consecutive ones, and I'm sending it in the chat box. So give it a try, and as usual, send me the screenshots once you passed all the test cases. Okay, this question is the same. So you'll be given an array of binary values. That is, it will contain only ones and zeros. You have to find out what is the max consecutive one sequence. So I hope you understood the logic also. The logic goes like this. When you encounter a 1, you will keep on incrementing the ones count. But when you encounter a 0, you will update the max ones with the current ones count and previous max ones count. Whichever the one is maximum, you are going to update max ones with that. When you find a 0. But not only that, when you find a 0, you are going to set ones count back to 0. Okay, the reason is, from now onwards, you need to start counting freshly. So this is very fundamental, guys. It may look like it's a very typical algorithm, but it's not. It's actually a fundamental concept on which a lot of questions will be framed around.
ప్రోడక్ట్ ఏంటన్నా అదే నార్మల్ బట్టలు ఉంటాయి కదా నెట్లో షర్టు ప్యాంటు షూస్ సన్ గ్లాసెస్ తీసేసి స్క్రీన్ షాట్ తీసేసి అవి షర్ట్స్ నార్మల్ షర్ట్ కింద షర్ట్ కట్ చేసి ప్యాంట్ కింద ప్యాంట్ కట్ చేసి క్రియేటివ్ అవుట్ఫిట్ విత్ ప్రభాస్ చాట్ జీపీటీతో ఆ బట్టలతో ప్రభాస్తో అవుట్ఫిట్ ఇస్తుందా
ఏంట్రా
చాట్ జీపీటీతో వీళ్ళు ఇచ్చిన లింక్స్ షర్ట్స్ తోటి ఒక హీరో క్రియేట్ చేసి ఆ హీరోని ప్రభాస్ చేసుకున్న అవుట్ఫిట్ని డీకోడ్ చేద్దామని చెప్పి సేమ్ అయ్యి చెప్పడం మళ్ళీ నేను 4 రీల్స్ చూసాను ఇప్పటికి అవునండి అర్థమైందా నీకు అర్థమైందా లేదా
Okay, so a lot of you have answered and sent the screenshot in the chat box. I really appreciate it. But look here, friends. So the approach I explained could fail in one case, and you have to handle that one case also. For instance, in the approach that I just told you, what we are trying to do is we are trying to update the max ones whenever we find a zero, right? For example, so far I found 2 ones here. So these 2 green ones at 0th and first indexes. But when am I updating that? I found 2 consecutive ones whenever I found a zero like this, right? If I found a zero, then I am trying to find the max of so-called accumulated ones and the max of max ones, and I'm updating this in max ones like this too. But there are some places, there are some occasions where this fails. For example, take this one. So I have a 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. Now you can see the maximum consecutive one segment here is actually 4, right? But see what happens if I use my approach. In my approach, we started at I being 0th index and we found a 0. And we take two values, right? How many current ones are there, consecutive ones, and how many max consecutive ones are there. Both are starting from where? 0. Okay. Now, if you look at this 0, by the time you encountered a 0, what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to update max ones with the maximum value of ones and max ones. But it seems like both are zeros, right? So this will be 0 only. Now, when I encounter a 1, when I find a 1, I'm trying to increment the ones count, right? So once, this means I found one consecutive one. Now when I found one more 1 again, I'm incrementing the count. That's good. I found two consecutive ones, these two segment, right? That is fine. But when I encounter a 0 now, I know that the consecutive one segment is over. Now what does that mean? That means if you encounter a 0, so far whatever the ones you encountered, that chain is broken. Now that is why I'm going to say that so far the maximum number of consecutive ones I found is 2. Now how do you do that? By updating max ones with the maximum value of max ones. See, max ones is 0, ones is 2, right? What is the maximum? 2. So I'm updating this max ones with 2. Now that indicates so far I found 2 consecutive ones like this. But since the chain is broken, I have to start counting from 1 again, right? So ones from 0 again like this. So that's why I'm setting ones to 0. But now see, next we encountered a 1. So I'm incrementing ones count by 1. So again I encountered a 1, incrementing it by 1. Thus by becoming 2. Again I encountered a 1, it becomes 3. Again I encountered a 1, it becomes 4. But unfortunately, you can see that my max 1 still is storing 2. The reason is I'm only trying to update this max ones when a 0 is encountered. But this entire array is ending with ones only. So there is no 0 here. If a 0 is here, I would have updated this max ones with 4, right? But since that 0 is not here, even though max consecutive ones are 4 here, I'm answering 2. Now this is where the approach literally fails if you go like this, but it's a quick fix. In the end, instead of returning max ones, you can return for these kind of cases the maximum value of ones, which is 4, or max ones, 2. So which one is max? 4, right? So then you will return 4. Is it clear, guys? I hope you understood this. So the implementation is very simple. So I will try to write the code for this. So I will try it in C++, maybe. Okay. So the question is find maximum consecutive ones, and the vector is given for us. So what I'm trying to do is, I know that I have to keep a count of ones. So I'm taking a variable called ones count. I'm setting it to C. Now at the same time, I'm going to take one more variable called max consecutive ones, right? So how many max consecutive ones I can find? So I'm storing it to 0. Again, I'm taking it as 0. Now my idea is I will simply run a loop on nums like this for int I in nums. So I don't need an index-based loop. I can go with a value-based loop. Now what I will check? I will check if the current character is actually a 1. If I equals 1, there is only one thing you will do. Simply increment ones count. So when you keep on finding ones, increment ones count, right? Else, which means when you found a 0. So how can I know I found a 0? If I is not 1, then it will definitely be 0, right? Because they said that it's a binary array, right? Binary array means it will contains only ones and zeros. So if I value is not 1, that is certainly a 0. Now this is where we have to think. When a 0 is occurred, that means so far there might be a possibility of a consecutive ones occurrence. So now I'm going to store the maximum value into ones, max consecutive ones. So how do I store? I will simply set max consecutive ones count to max of ones count, whatever the ones so far I found. And what is the max ones count so far? Like this, max consecutive ones count. That's what we are trying to do. Simply, so far, what is the ones count present? Between that And what is max consecutive ones so far? I'm updating max consecutive ones with that max. That's it. So finally, you can simply return max consecutive. But here is the problem. The problem is when you encounter a 0, the consecutive nature is ended, right? So which means if you are trying to count ones later, you need to start counting them from 0 again. So I'm going to set ones count to 0. This is a crucial step, guys, because we need to start counting ones from beginning again.
చల్లగానే ఉంటుంది భయపడాల్సిన పని ఉండదు.
Say beginning from like freshly again.
ఆ రూమ్ లో అయితే పక్కా భయపడతాం.
That's the point. So when you run, maybe the test cases will pass,
పక్కన అమ్మాయిలు ఉంటారు.
but hidden test cases may fail, or the first test case itself is failed. The reason is you can see the max consecutive ones are 3 here, but my code is outputting 2. Now why is it outputting 2? Because I'm only updating consecutive ones, max consecutive ones, upon encountering 0, like this here. But you can see after these 3 ones, I encounter no 0 at all. So that is why instead of giving 3, it's giving 2. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is simply instead of returning max consecutive ones count, return the same thing, max of ones count and max consecutive ones count. So which one is bigger? That will be the answer. Accepted. And if you submit, all the test cases will be passed. Is it clear, guys? How many of you understood the explanation that is present on the left side? So if you haven't solved in your own language, you can simply try this and solve this. Solve it and send the screenshot in your own language. If you're using Java or Python, doesn't matter. Clear? Okay. So anybody is still trying? So if you are still trying, just send a message in the chat box that's still trying. I will keep this on the screen so that you can convert into your language, because this is very fundamental and very important to understand why this last line is written like this. Of course, instead of returning the last line like this, you can actually put this max ones count, this line, when I equals 1 only here. Here you can put it right next to ones count plus plus, you can put it, and then you can avoid this line. Okay guys, so I hope this is clear. So as I mentioned, a lot of problems can be framed around this kind of technique, and I'm showing one such problem and I'll give you one idea. And what I want you to do is, before coming to tomorrow's class, try to use the same idea we used for max consecutive ones. You need to change it slightly to find this. So this problem is LeetCode 674 and it's called as longest continuous increasing subsequence. So even though the problem states it as subsequence, actually they ask question on subarray only, subarray. So first let me read out the problem. The problem is, given an unsorted array of integer nums, unsorted means it's not sorted, it could have numbers in random order. Return the length of the longest continuous increasing subsequence, in other words subarray. What did they say? Longest continuous increasing subsequence, right? Now the subsequence must be strictly increasing. Now let's see what exactly do they mean by this. For example, if you take this array, right, if you take this array you can see in a lot of places it is increasing. For example, if you take 3, 5, this part is increasing, right? Because 5 is greater than 3. Okay. And if you take 5, 4, this is not increasing, right? Because 5 is not greater than 4. Sorry, 4 is not greater than 5. So that's why this is decreasing. See, 5 and 4 means it is going down. Now, if you take 4 and 7, again they are increasing. So what you need to find out is, you need to find out one subarray which is having the maximum length of increasing subsequence. For instance, if you take 1, 3, 5, see 1, 3, 5 means from 1 to 3 it's increasing, and from 3 to 5 also it's increasing. But if you include 1, 3, 5, 4, this is not the correct answer. 4 is not the correct answer, because after 5 it is decreasing, not increasing. So what is longest here? Only 1, 3, 5. You may argue that, sir, we can also pick 4, 7. Yes, that is also increasing, but 4, 7 contains only 2 values. But if you pick 1, 3, 5, it contains how many values? 3 values. So what is the longest? Guys, did you understand? Did you understand this? How many of you understood the question? Longest continuous increasing subsequence. Only 2? You understood, right? Okay. Now you will actually get more idea on this. For input 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, the answer is 1. Now why exactly is this 1? Because you can see if you pick any subsequence or any sub-array here, nothing is increasing. See, this 2 and 2, they are not increasing, right? They are same. But they are saying in the problem, it's clearly mentioned that the subsequence must be strictly increasing. Strictly increasing means if you take 2 here, the next value should be definitely 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever. Definitely it should be 2. It should not be 2 again or 1, right? And if you pick this 2, look at the next number. The next number is also 2, which is not increasing. So only one value is there where the longest continuous subsequence is increasing, that is just 2. So you can pick any one of these 2's, that is the answer. So they're asking its length, right? Not the values. So you can simply write 1 as answer. I hope you understood the question. If you actually understood this, can you tell me what will be the output for this? So I'm going to write some random numbers. So tell me what is the longest increasing sequence? 3, 77, 84, 9, 2, 94, 67, 1, 7, 9, 16. Come on. So what is the length of longest increasing subarray here? Length of longest increasing subarray. And also tell me what are the values belong to this subarray. Of course, in the question they did not ask it, but I just want to know. So identify the longest increasing subarray here and what is its length. Do we have answers here? Is it 4? Yes, that's correct. The answer is 4 here, because you can see 377, 84. This is longest increasing only, but its length is what? 3. So let's keep it this way. Now if you take 9, from 84 and 9, you can observe that it is decreased. It's not increased. So far the longest is 3. But from 9 it gets worse, right? It is decreasing. It's not increasing. But from 2, again it looks like it started increasing. 2 and 94, see? but the length of this is actually less than the length we found so far. See, we found the length is 3 before, but now it's just 2. So there is no point in updating this, right? So far, 3 is still the maximum length of increasing subarray. Now, 67 and 94, they break the chain, right? Because from 94, it should still be increasing. Like you should see something like 95 or maybe 100 or something. But this is clearly violating. So then 67 and 1 are also violating. But if you pick 1, 7, 9, 16, they are strictly increasing. And also, if you take their length, this subarray length, it is 4. So which is greater than this 377 and 84's length, right? So now it's 4. So what is the answer? 4. Now you can see this look just like finding max consecutive ones, right? But this time the consecutive nature is applied for increasingness. Okay, earlier there will be 3 ones here. So if you remember, there will be 3 ones, and the one that breaks the chain is a 0. But now consecutiveness is defined as increasing, continuously increasing, right? And whenever it decreases, then you will stop. That means it breaks the chain. And we start counting from 1 again. Guys, you understood? How many of you are able to see the similarity between max consecutive ones and this problem? Raise your hand or send in the chat box if you were able to see the similarity between max consecutive ones question and this one. Yes or no? So send it in the chat box. But here, the similarity is there, but you should not check for ones and zeros. So how do you frame your logic? How do you find out I am keep on increasing the values? That's the question here. Right? You check it out. I'm sending this problem in the chat box. So that is, it is having only 51% of acceptance rate, which means out of 600K solved, only 300K submissions were accepted. So I'm not saying this is difficult, but it requires you some thinking. How do you find this number is greater than the previous, and how do you keep on updating the max consecutiveness, right? So I'm sending this in the chat box. You solve it using the technique we used for max consecutive ones, and come to tomorrow's class after solving this. Okay, so in tomorrow's class, I will try to explain some more programs if there are any related to this. Otherwise, I will just move on to the 2-pointer technique, after explaining which we will step into solving problems that related to sorting of arrays. Right, guys? So try that problem, and if there are any more problems like this, there will be, because this is a very common thing in coding. This is a common, like you can say, a common pattern. Many questions can be framed like this. In almost all questions, the logic stays the same. You just have to try different things, right? I hope we will try this problem today. So that's it, guys, from my side for the day. So thank you for joining the session. Please give a try to that problem. Not only that, I am sending you some easy problems from LeetCode, right? So please try to solve those problems to get more knowledge on arrays. So some problems may think they're easy, but they require some implementation, which means when you're trying to solve the problem, you will take more variables, or maybe you will try to keep track of something. Like this, you will do some implementation which enhances your coding skills gradually. Right? So I hope it's clear, guys. So thank you for joining the session. So let's meet tomorrow. Yes, I will explain that, how to implement and access frequency arrays in Java and Python. So that is in the pipeline. After explaining 2 pointers, This requires a hash map or dictionary concept. So I will explain that after 2 pointers, and when we solve some problems on a sorting also, that is the next concept. Frequency arrays or hash maps, dictionaries. That's in the pipeline, definitely. We will see problems related to that.